Well, good morning, folks. Oof, what a brutal evening it was. The Varsity Cup final at Danny Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch. Oof, what a brutal, brutal game. Interesting the first half, and it looked like it was going to be a great finish the first half with a try scored, which was disallowed by the TMO. And instead of going into the locker room trailing 19-18, Mahdi's found themselves trailing by a wider margin. Second half was pretty ugly. I left before the end of the game. It just got uglier and uglier. And they just got rolled over. Ikes just destroyed them. The Mahdi's defense was virtually non-existent, folks. Non-existent. But that's not the purpose of this video. It's not about rugby in South Africa. It's about the propaganda war that's taking place in South Africa. And the latest, an op-ed piece from Adrian Basson of News 24. The hypocrisy of South Africa's media elites is astounding. It leaves a cogent, lucid, clear-thinking person gobsmacked, folks. And yet another piece of intentionally misleading op-ed disguised as informed opinion. News 24's wayward editor, Adrian Basson, is at it again. This time making invalid assumptions and trying to sound erudite by name-dropping while getting it mostly wrong. Now, in a sad opinion piece entitled Adrian Basson's U.S. Diplomats Should Call Out Trump's Lies About South Africa, Basson continues his endless effort to mislead the public. Oh, it's not intentional? Really? I mean, is it possible he's simply misinformed? Maybe he never leaves the ivory tower down the street from Cape Town International Convention Center there. Maybe that's what it is. Have I been too harsh in my judgment of Adrian Basson? He says U.S. President Donald Trump has continued his campaign of lies and disinformation against South Africa, a country that he's never visited. Friday nights in South Africa are no longer only about hamburgers, Coke, and beer. They're also about watching out for Trump's latest missive against us via his social media platform. Well, indeed, of late, South Africans paying attention have been treated to Friends and Family Only Fridays, FAFO, which you know what that stands for. We kindly say Friends and Family Only here. Astonishingly, the leader of the world's most prosperous country is allowed to spread fake news that could inflame racial tension and polarization without any consequence. But here we are. Irony, thy face is Adrian Basson. Talk about the kettle calling the pot black, spreading fake news, inflaming racial tensions. Is that not your prima facie purpose? Is not your raison d'etre at News 24 is to spread racial dissension? It seems to be, based on the way you report the news. Now, Basson's latest frustration is Trump's Truth Social post in which he uploaded a 3-minute montage of Julius Malema exposing himself as a dangerous radical member of parliament that he is and which Basson ignores. Now, Adrian claims that Trump believes false information being spread on social media by bots and anonymous accounts, and this is influencing his position on South Africa. It's a shocking state of affairs. Yes, we do have a shocking state of affairs, but the shocker is not Trump. It's the South African media. Bots and anonymous accounts? Hey, Rocco, there are genuine, informed, objective folks accurately reporting on the things which you choose to ignore. He says it's time for the United States mission leaders in South Africa to step in and send a formal memorandum to Washington outlining the true state of affairs in the country where they serve. Well, he name drops the new deputy chief of mission and then the consular officers and our consuls in Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban. Ooh, Adrian, well done. You did some research for once. Do you think that they're not already sending the accurate picture of how they see things and perceive things in South Africa? That's their daily mission. That's their job. They have a staff to do that. That's the purpose of attachés, legal attachés, military attachés, political attachés. Yeah, Adrian, you need to learn a little bit about diplomacy before you start making these silly comments. Adrian, unlike you, I've served in an American embassy, 8 of them in Africa alone, to be exact. And I've worked in over 30 U.S. embassies around the globe. So I'll give you this one. Yes, Virginia, it is the task of diplomats to inform Washington, D.C., but it's also the task of them to represent the president and push the president's agenda and objectives. Hence, Reuben Brigady exposing the African National Congress, Lady R cover-up, when Lutuli House ignored the situation and rudely dismissed polite diplomatic requests from the U.S. government for over 5 months. Brigady did exactly what Washington told him to do, expose the ANC cover-up. Now, I'm not arguing here that there were weapons on that ship. What I'm arguing is that the government covered up what happened there and refused to acknowledge it. And why did they do that? It raises more questions. But Brigady did what he was told to do, represent the president, and that's exactly what he did. Now, Washington and Trump are very well informed regarding what is happening in South Africa there, Adrian. It seems that Basson is not so well informed. Apparently, he does not watch SABC, which in February covered the land grabs in Seshego in Polokwane, up there in the Popo province. Covered it right there. People openly telling everyone that they were expropriating the land on their own, just confiscating land, dividing it into plots, giving it to people, and demanding services from Polokwane. SABC covered it and then covered up the story by removing the coverage. Now, the rest of us saw it. What did you see, Adrian? Then he seems to have missed the land grabs outside East London and elsewhere in the Eastern Cape, as well as in Northwest Province. How? Is he so occupied with his leftist agenda that he cannot see the forest through the trees? I think it's a fair question for Adrian. He says it's simply untrue that land confiscation and genocide are the primary topics of discussion in South Africa. There's no land confiscation or genocide against white people happening. Full stop. Well, the only full stop here, ladies and gentlemen, is to end the propaganda. Whether land and abuse of minorities are primary topics is not germane and has never been the allegation by Trump. He never claimed that that's the primary problem in South Africa. As far as genocide, it is Adrian Basson and his ilk pushing that red herring. As South Africans are slaughtered at a rate of 40 and more daily, Basson blithely ignores the carnage, seeking a free pass for the ANC's broken policing and judicial systems that offer zero deterrent to taking another's life. As leftists endlessly seek to explain away the obvious with distractionary tactics like the government is not expropriating land, a dishonest statement in and of itself, as land is acquired through underhanded misuse of existing Section 25 mechanisms, which will now be put on steroids with expropriation without compensation. But back to the land grabs. Adrian Basson is willfully ignorant of the moment in time that we are in. These things are happening. And the government is not upholding the rule of law, protecting property owners from theft. Whether Ramaphosa orders land grabs or his ANC DA cabal sits silently as lives and agricultural productivity are obliterated, land is stolen, done and dusted, finished in Clark. He says when Trump refers to land confiscation, he is probably referring to the Expropriation Act, which is currently being challenged in the Constitutional Court. The act allows for nil compensation in the public interest, but is subject to Section 25 of the Constitution that stipulates payment must be just and equitable. Well, that's an assumption on your part, one likely fueled by ignorance of the U.S. government's capabilities in knowing what's going on in South Africa. Trump knows about Shisheho and East London. Now, the Expropriation Without Compensation Act is unconstitutional in that it is incongruent with Section 25, and Ramaphosa himself has already announced the intent to expropriate buildings in Joburg under expropriation without compensation. So what are you talking about, Adrian? Section 25 of the Constitution means nothing, Adrian, if it's simply ignored. He says when illegal land invasions occur, the police step in. Green, that's the incoming Deputy Chief of Mission Embassy, and his colleagues would do well to ask a research body like the Institute of Poverty, Land, and Agrarian Studies to provide them with the history of land reform in South Africa. Well, half-truths, and dated ones at that, Adrian. Historically, the African National Congress has mostly pushed land thieves off of land, especially in Gauteng, when government land is illegally occupied. Just ask the Red Ants. They'll tell you all about it. That's how they make money, by driving people off of government land. However, this has not always been the case, and it certainly is not true of Hillbrow and the Joburg Central Business District, where the police have done nothing to chase these people out. For an accurate history, we need none of Adrian Basson's condescending references to parties who have vested interest in what's happening with land expropriation. He says Trump's use of the term genocide is inflammatory and wrong. Even his local groupies, AfReform and Solidarity, have been at pains over recent weeks to clarify that white people are not the victims of genocide. The genocide lie is being spread by an active and well-organized social media campaign driven by anonymous users and bots. And where's your evidence of this, Adrian Basson? I realize it's an op-ed piece, but you can't simply spew opinions without any evidence whatsoever, any experience, or any first-hand knowledge. You're just making a statement there. Where's your evidence that bots and anonymous campaigns? Yes, what Trump said is inflammatory, and it's unnecessarily distracting, especially since it burns the left shorts, and it becomes their excuse to dismiss the very real things happening in South Africa. Now, as far as AfReform and Solidarity, they have been at pains for years, not weeks, Adrian, years they've been at pains to disassociate themselves from the South African media's obsession and propaganda blitz promoting white genocide so that they can rubbish the very thing that they're promoting, the genocide narrative, which the media fuels for clicks and adverts. It's not Solidarity and AfReform that are claiming white genocide. It's Adrian Basson who's claiming it doesn't exist so he can refute it. This is the tail chasing the dog, and that is South Africa's media in a nutshell. Now, the genocide lie, like the ANC lie about Gaza, is fueled not by bots, primarily, but by South Africa's media. He says they are taking the land of white farmers and then killing them and their families. Quoting Trump, fake, in all caps, as Trump would say. The media refuses to report on this. Yes, because it's untrue, says Adrian. He says, ironically, Trump uses a News 24 video of a Julius Malema speech in his video without any context that Malema is not in government and that his EFF party is plummeting in public support. Well, taking land, Shisheho, and much more, killing farmers, thousands slaughtered over the past 2 decades. Now, as far as refusing to report, well, some, if not much of the media, don't report these things honestly, Adrian, including your network. Now, as far as Julius Malema, contrary to Adrian Basson's lie, Malema is in fact in government. He's a sitting member of parliament and a member of the broken Judicial Services Commission that selects the incompetent judges who sit on the bench and fail to uphold the rule of law. He's not part of the current ruling cabal, but he is trying to join it. Now, Malema's EFF may be collapsing, but his violent rhetoric and efforts to exhort his followers to kill the Boers goes unchecked. The domestic terror attacks on 43 cliques locations were never dealt with, including the petrol bombing, one of them. Nor was his calling for burn the Boer out at Senegal, and 95,000 hectares of prime farmland were destroyed, thousands of animals, homes, and people seriously injured, and no consequences. And on it goes from Julius Malema. Now, Basson ignores the obvious to achieve his desired outcome here: denial and distraction. There is no white genocide. Well, nobody's pushing the narrative except you, Adrian, and your friends. So, you can deny it. No one is claiming that exists. We're talking about people being treated unjustly and unfairly. Stick to the story, not the narrative. He says our murder rate is obscene and a national tragedy, but it's false to claim white farmers and their families are primarily the victims of murder in South Africa. Now, folks, do you see how he does it here yet again? Who is claiming that farmers are the primary victims of crime in South Africa? Only dishonest leftists seeking to diminish the horrors that unfold nightly across rural South Africa. Shame on you, Adrian Basson. Have you ever spoken to any black, white, or colored South Africans who've suffered the very horrors which you seek to sweep under the carpet? Have you? Ever? Once? I can't believe you'd have the same callous attitude if you ever talked to anyone who suffered that fate or the survivors. So, in Adrian Basson's world, things only matter if they're the primary issues or concerns, like unemployment and the budget and the collapsing economy. All big issues for South Africa. But the torture, dismemberment, rape, disfigurement, and execution of peace-loving rural South Africans, black, white, and colored, and Indian, is unimportant because it's not a primary issue. See, this is the problem with the government and with Adrian Basson. Things only matter to you if it's primarily the issue. What an idiotic concept. So things only matter if they're the primary issues or concerns, Adrian. Well, no wonder minorities feel besieged. In Basson's world, their concerns are irrelevant. And that is the point, isn't it, folks? Isn't that the point? The concerns of minorities in South Africa are irrelevant in the minds of Adrian Basson, the South African media, and the ruling elites. You don't matter. You're just fodder for the cannon. Lack of policing, lack of judicial deterrent, lack of imprisonment. No deterrent to stop the violent carnage that's going on with 80 and more people brutally murdered in this country every day. But you don't matter because you're not a primary concern to Adrian Basson. The fact that Trump continues to spread falsehoods about white people in South Africa, despite having access to the best data and a full embassy in Pretoria, beckons the question, why? Well, Adrian, I'll tell you why. First off, they're not falsehoods. Some of them are misstatements, but you blow it way out of proportion. But Trump doesn't suffer from the cognitive dissonance that Adrian Basson suffers from. So he says, or does he maybe want to blackmail us into withdrawing the genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice before backing off with his false claims of a white genocide in South Africa? Well, when Trump addressed this, the only time he ever addressed in his first term, in 2018 after an appearance of Ansel Ritz on Tucker Carlson's program on Fox News, Trump talked about farmers being murdered correctly. That had nothing to do with Gaza. How do you link Gaza with this conversation? Only dishonest, water-carrying, commie-loving, government-backing leftist media would mention the two in the same phrase. They have nothing to do with each other. Yes, it's mentioned as executive order, but it's just one of the latest grievances the United States has with the conduct of South Africa's ruling elites that have gone against our national security interests and against our security for years, including training Chinese People's Liberation Army pilots with NATO and American pilots at a training facility in South Africa. Are you serious? Yeah. What about Iran and that relationship? Adrian Basson, completely dishonest here. An honest, objective observer would have mentioned things I've just mentioned, but you don't mention that. You contort and turn this op-ed in a direction to influence people to rubbish Donald Trump when you're the one who needs to be rubbished here. You're simply misstating what's going on intentionally. Denial and distraction. So, my response to, does he want to get rid of the claim on Gaza? I'm going to laugh. I mean, what blackmail? Honestly, what blackmail? It's been 9 weeks since Trump's executive order cutting all foreign aid to South Africa after the African National Congress whined as if they were targeted during a global pause on foreign assistance. They weren't the only ones. Every country in the world lost their foreign assistance, yet the ANC acted as if they were the only ones. Oh, woe is me, America's attacking us, evil empire, they're coming after us. No, Donald Trump paused all foreign aid because of pervasive, widespread, that's redundant, isn't it? Pervasive and widespread. Anyway, widespread corruption by the Biden regime to evaluate the program and see what aid was being used properly and what needed to be chucked down the road. South Africa whined and made stupid statements, and as a consequence, lost all their aid, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, I'm going to ask Adrian Basson to please name any demand that Donald Trump has issued to South Africa. Any. What demand? Has he demanded that you do this, you do that? No, nothing. 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 Not a single demand from Donald Trump in 9 weeks. But Basson and the left and the ANC run around as if the United States is expecting something from South Africa. We simply expect you to uphold your constitution, follow the rule of law, and lower your tariffs. That's about it. But that's a new one. The tariffs weren't even part of all this. In fact, the ANC is illegally a participant in the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, and Trump has failed in his duty as president to remove South Africa from that generous agreement. Now, the tariffs are in effect now pretty much abrogate access to AGOA, but prior to that, you're illegally part of AGOA. By abrogating private property rights, you violate a key tenet of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, and by law, Trump should have removed you long ago. But he didn't, and you completely missed the point that Trump is helping South Africa despite your whining. Anyway, get a clue, Adrian. Get a clue. What say you, South Africa? What say you, world? Cheers.